In this podcast, I am exploring the topic of forgiveness and whether forgiveness from others is necessary to have repented for a sin. If you have done everything you could, repented fully for your mistake, but the person you wronged refused to forgive you, have you still redeemed yourself? Say you have done everything in your power, yet they will not grant you forgiveness. Some people may say that it is God that ultimately decides whether or not you are forgiven, and that it is He who deems you worthy of forgiveness. I, however, believe that forgiveness comes from within. Even if you are forgiven by the person you wronged, it doesn't mean anything if you haven't forgiven yourself. When someone does something to hurt another person, purposefully or by accident, under the influence of another or by their own accord, it sits with them. It's always on the back of their mind. To get rid of it, they need to repent for their sin. If they don't, the guilt stays with them. The guilt doesn't always happen immediately. In this passage from the book The Sunflower, the soldier speaks about how the guilt came later, after the initial rush of the act had worn off. He said, "Some time elapsed before I realized what guilt I had incurred," on page 30. It may take time to sink in, but unless you are truly heartless, the guilt will creep up on you, forcing you to try and repay for your mistake. This may mean apologizing to the victim if it was simply a small mistake, or it could mean a greater act of penance. For me, if I have done what I can to make it up to the person for whatever I did, I feel fulfilled, even if the person chooses not to forgive me. I can see how for others, forgiveness needs to come from someone else. They need to hear it from their victim that they have been forgiven. But for me, if you have forgiven yourself, it means just as much, if not more, than the forgiveness from another. In the book The Sunflower, the Nazi soldier was dying. He was incapable of simple movements or tasks. The guilt from his former actions was like a weight on his chest. In this passage, he even compared the pain from his guilt to his wounds. He said, "The pains in my body are terrible, but worse still is my conscience," on page 53. Had he not been on his deathbed, maybe he would have done more to absolve his sins, but an apology was all he was able to muster. If I tried to put myself in Simon's shoes, I don't think I could have forgiven the soldier, nor would I have felt like it was my right to do so. However, I believe that the soldier realized that he had done what he could at the time to try and absolve his mistakes, and that was enough for him to die peacefully. Maybe God or Simon or the Jews never forgave him, and maybe that's what matters, is the forgiveness from others. And that is what the soldier wanted from Simon. However, when he didn't get it, I believe it was up to him whether or not he died in peace. In my opinion, he didn't deserve Simon's forgiveness, but he had fully repented for his sins and therefore could forgive himself and die in peace. The soldier recognized what he did was wrong and tried to do something to make up for part of it. It may have not been the best way to repent his mistakes, and honestly, from an outsider's view, it seems selfish. But he was just trying to rid himself of this guilt that had plagued him, and this was the only way he could think how. I think Simon did the right thing by not forgiving him, but I believe the Nazi had repented enough so that he deserved to die in peace and earned the sunflower on his grave. For the person who is choosing not to forgive, this may seem rude or unfair, but it is just as unfair to expect someone to live with their guilt after trying to fix their mistakes. I think in the case of the sunflower, Simon would be glad that the soldier was still able to die in peace, because I believe that deep down he wanted to forgive the soldier, but knew it was not in his right to do so. Because of this, I think he would be glad the soldier found another way to relieve himself of his guilt. I believe that learning to forgive yourself is as important as obtaining forgiveness from another. And while you still need to repent for whatever you did, once you've done what you can, don't wait around for forgiveness. Simply realize that you have done enough to absolve your mistake and move on, free of guilt.